Welcome to the Impact Investing Show. I'm your host, Samuel Ikanwini Kimwin, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you guys today. I hope you're looking forward to today's show because I am certainly looking forward to today's show. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about why we're here and what we plan to do. Now, first and foremost, the reason we have the Impact Show is for something very, very simple. It's the fact that you guys asked for it. So what do I mean by that? Well, right at the beginning of the pandemic / lockdown, we were basically approached by a number of people who are in the property space who were asking us questions about strategy. How do I strategize through this? How do I get through that? Etc. etc. And as a result of all of these people reaching out to us, asking us all these questions about their property journey, what we basically decided to do is, rather than try to answer 100 people's questions every single day, every single week, we said, well, hold on a minute, let's just do a live show. Let's actually just jump on live regularly, which we basically deemed as once a week, in order to help people answer their property questions and push them forward in their property journey. So if you've got questions in terms of your property journey, if you're looking for someone to strategize with to help you move forward in your property journey, let us know. This is the show to do that on. Now, first and foremost, let's get the tech out of the way. If you can hear me clearly, just write in the chat, I can hear you. If you can hear me clearly and you can see me clearly, just write in the chat, Samuel, I can hear you. Samuel, I can see you. And we'll use that to push forward in tonight's show. Now, this is episode 18, guys. Episode 18. Like, I don't even know where the time has gone. There are only 52 weeks in a year and we have already reached week 18 of our live shows. So for me, this is an absolute phenomenon, that the reason that we've been able to show up again and again and again and provide value on a week-to-week basis for the community. And it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing feeling to be able to have done this for the community. And I'm looking forward to seeing the community continue to move forward in their property journey as a direct result as well. So guys, look, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's also a pleasure to support the community, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the community also will move forward as a direct result. Now, tonight's show, we got a few things to talk about. Some of these things are going to be quite interesting. I've got a document I want to share with you, which has recently came out by PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big 4 accountancy firms in the world, and I'm quite interested in basically sharing that. It was something that came my way via a WhatsApp group, a property WhatsApp group that I'm in. Excellent. Thank you for the comment, Dion. So yeah, so, you know, one of the property groups I'm in basically shared this document, and I thought it would be absolutely fantastic and really pertinent to share this specific document with you guys, the viewers of the Impact Show, to help you guys move forward in your property journey as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the phone lines. Straight after we turn on the phone lines so you guys can call in with your questions, we are then going to read through our disclaimer really quickly. Straight after we read through our disclaimer, I'm going to go through this document and then we'll start taking calls straight after that. Does that sound like a good plan? Let me know in the chat if that sounds like a good plan. Turn on the phone lines, share the disclaimer, go through, or turn the phone, basically start to take calls. Let me know if that sounds like a good plan on tonight's show. Now, side by side with everything I've just shared with you, what I'd love for you guys to do is hit that button. Why not press the like button? Let YouTube know that you are listening and watching some content that you think is going to be of value to other people in the YouTube world. Feel free to hit like, feel free to hit the share button if you're that brave, and share this particular live show with your community so other people can know how valuable this content is to the property community at large and other people. And look, side by side with that, let me say this again. I want to say this at the beginning of the show today. We're nearly at 250 subscribers. Okay, we are nearly at 250 YouTube subscribers. Now, this is not going to be one of those shows where I spend 5 minutes every single time saying hit the subscribe, hit the subscribe, hit the subscribe. I don't want to be saying hit the subscribe. So what I'm going to say, instead of all the hit the subscribe, hit the subscribe, hit the subscribe, is we are nearly at 250 subscribers. So there's a benchmark right there, which we're right next to. So if you want to be a partaker of us moving forward in that regard, feel free to do what you know you got to do so that we can move forward as a community, because that's what we're all about. All right, so without further ado, let's do what we got to do. All right, and that is turn the phone lines on. So phone lines are on right now. You can use the number right there going across the bottom of the screen, and obviously you can see what it tells you to do just before you do that as well. Feel free to subscribe, but the calling number is right there, 0330 606 0403 with the access code following. Also, you will need the access code in order to get on, and the team and myself will route you through so you can be on the show, and we'll take your call and answer your questions. And guys, let me say this. I don't usually say this, but I want to say this so you guys know this. There are no stupid questions. There are no silly questions. There are no questions you can't ask. So what I mean by that is any question is a valuable question. If you have a question as a beginner in the property world, if you have a question as an intermediate investor, if you've got a question as an advanced investor, feel free to ask your questions. And guys, look, let me tell you this. I don't know everything, okay? I don't purport or profess to know everything, but I'm here to support you, here to strategize with you, and I'm happy to give you guys the value that I have, and that's what we do on this show. So call lines are open, so feel free to jump in and call if you have a specific question or something in your property game and business that you want to strategize through. Now, let me run through the disclaimer. We usually share this every single week, that all information provided and the results that are given are generally exemplary, and as a result, each person's results may vary or differ, and to bear that in mind, results are based on consistent strategies being used, and we advise that you always seek legal and financial advice from a qualified professional in any situation, scenario, or case where you may think you're going to basically do what we are encouraging you to do. So, without further ado, I want you guys to put it in the comments, the statement, let's go. And we're jumping straight into tonight's show. So let me see in the comments, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then equally, let me see the likes pump up inside of today's show. And then we are going to go for it. We're going to be going for it straight away. Hope you guys are ready for tonight's show. We got a lot of value to share with you, and I'm looking forward to it. All right, we got callers coming through already. I haven't seen the let's go in the chat, guys. Let me see the let's go in the chat. We have got callers coming through already. And like I said, I wanted to go through this article, but we'll go through the article in a moment. Let's jump on, speak to the callers, and potentially come on to the document that I wanted to share with you guys in a little bit. So let's go to caller number 1. This is an international number, 576. Okay, so let's see if we can get the caller through. Good evening, caller 576. Good evening. This is an international caller, caller 576. Okay, caller 576 doesn't seem to be coming through right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump onto another caller we have, and then we'll come back to caller 576 maybe a little bit later, because it sounds like they've muted us. Okay, so this is caller 762. Good evening, caller 762. Okay, for some reason I can't hear caller 762 either. Good evening, caller 762. Okay, I hope it's not the callers just being quiet. Caller 762. Let us know in the chat on YouTube if you can hear us. If you can't, we are here, and I can't hear anything. We can hear you. Excellent. So, caller 762, I can't hear you yet. Please, 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 if you are calling in, guys, just as a heads up, if you're calling in, focus on the phone. Don't focus on the YouTube, because the problem with that is you start talking to the TV, but we're on the actual call. So, caller 762, I've got you, but for some reason you're not coming through, and I don't know why that is. Let me see if I can try one more thing. Okay, caller 762, I've got you on my other headphones. Bear with me one moment. Okay, caller 762, who do we have tonight? Excellent. Is that Yogesh? Hi Yogesh, how you doing? Excellent. I'm doing really, really well. I'm not sure why you're not coming through the main headphones that we usually use, but it's all good. As long as we've got you, that's the important thing. All right, so we'll go through your call, Yogesh, and then straight after that, we'll go on to the other caller. Just quickly, before I unmute you for the YouTube world, Yogesh, let me know that you are happy for the YouTube world to hear what you've got to say, and also to hear what I'm going to share with you as recommendations, or what I would do if I was in your predicament. Is that fine with you? Absolutely brilliant. All right, so I'll now be muting you on to the YouTube world for them to hear you as well. So, Yogesh, how can we help you? Well, ask your two. Depends on how long it takes us to get through. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That would be helpful. Slightly, yeah. Yep. 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 So a mixed use building effectively. All right. Of course, definitely. So, Yogesh, let me just confirm with you, okay? What's the specific question? Is it how do you value properties that you haven't valued before? Or is it really more so how do you value the commercial element on a mixed use project? Does that make sense? Because there's kind of two different questions in there. Okay. Okay. Perfect. That's perfect. So, guys, if you can hear Yogesh, you would have heard what he said. If you can't hear him, I'm going to reiterate his question. Yogesh has basically said he has a plan to basically do a certain type of development project where basically he would end up with a mixed use project, and that mixed use will be part commercial building, i.e. A1, A2 usage, and then part residential, but effectively kind of like micro apartments kind of thing. So, Yogesh has basically said in the area he plans to do that in Crystal Palace, there aren't necessarily a precedent already there. There aren't people already doing that. So as a direct result, he's not sure about what kind of values he's going to be able to get if he does that particular project in that particular scheme. But at the same time, he wants to be more confident about the numbers in terms of how he can make sure that he's going to get something profitable. Because obviously, if it's not profitable, there's no point in doing it. So is that a good summary, Yogesh? Powerful. All right. So in terms of accurate values, I'm going to say something. I'm going to throw a spanner in the work just for the sake of helping us with this conversation. Currently, there's a lot of noise around valuers actually looking outside of local areas in order to value properties down. Okay, so that's currently something that is being said is a practice going on. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen to you. I'm not saying that when you finish your project, because obviously if you're doing a project now, that might take 18, 24 months, 12 months before it's actually done. So we might not see that effect, and obviously the market might be in a different place at that time. So I'm not saying that's going to be the case for you. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want you to bear in mind that it's not too foreign to look outside of the immediate location in order to identify adequate comparables. Now, what I'm going to do as we're talking, I'm going to throw into the chat a video that we recorded some time ago. That video is called Property Comparables Done Properly. And what we did, again, this is a little plug for those of you who want to help us to get to 250 subscribers. But what we basically did when we hit 50 subscribers, I decided to do a video where I basically answered the question of one of my coaching clients for the YouTube community. And I basically never do that, because obviously my coaching clients are paying me and paying our organization in order for us to coach them. But this particular coaching client asked a really great question. He was kind of early in his property journey at the time. So he said, look, Samuel, can you help me to actually calculate comparables properly? So what I did is I not only answered him inside of our internal community, but I then also turned that into a video and shared that with the whole YouTube world because of the 50 people that had helped us hit 50 subscribers. So again, these are the kind of things I do when we hit YouTube benchmarks. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because I want you to understand, Yogesh, first and foremost, there's a video out there. It's in the chat right now. You can use that after this live to basically see how it can help you move forward. Second thing, in terms of nuts and bolts and giving you some real insights, is obviously what I shared a moment ago. Don't be too afraid to look outside of the area. Now, you're totally right. Outside of the area, the problem you're going to have is you're not going to have, you know, the area metric. So the fact that you're in a specific part of Crystal Palace, you're not going to have that factored in when you're looking outside of the area. And that's fine. And the reason it's fine is because what you can do is a practice I do sometimes, which is basically chopping up an area. So when I say chopping up an area, what do I mean? So I'll look at an area and I'll say, what's the average price of a 4-bed at a high standard? What's the average price of a 4-bed at a standard? What's the average price of a 4-bed at a really rundown standard? And then I'll do the same for a 3-bed. Then I'll do the same for a 2-bed. Then I'll do the same for a 1-bed. Now I could do that all on apartments, or I could do that all on houses. And then I can get all the way down to like a room, and I can get all the way down to, you know, whatever, a micro apartment if you do it that way. Now, if you don't have any micro apartments, the great thing is, you know, that the price of a micro apartment is very unlikely to be less than the price of a studio, for example. But equally, you know that in most cases, the price of a micro apartment is going to be unlikely to be more than a 1-bedroom apartment, because obviously a 1-bedroom apartment, if it's a conversion, will have a lot more space. If it's a new build, might have basically about the same space or a little bit more space. So the key is for you to start to look for patterns. And again, obviously, because I'm a statistician, my original degrees and qualifications were all in statistics. That kind of practice just makes sense to me. You start looking for the patterns. Okay, what are the patterns of 4-bedroom apartments versus 4-bedroom houses? What's actually the price differential between these 4-bedroom houses and these 4-bedroom flats? And then you can do the same all the way through the market. So for the residential element of your project, I would say that's the first thing you want to do. If there are no direct comparables in the area, go and look at other kind of comparables. Go and look at, you know, flats which are 1-beds. Go and look at studios. And then obviously, if what you're creating is right in the middle of that, then you want to say, okay, well, it's going to be an average of what's a bit above and a bit below. Now, obviously, the good thing is we know stuff like a micro apartment will probably be priced closer to a 1-bed flat than it would be priced to a studio, depending on the micro apartment. But generally, that's what you'd find. So because you'd find that, you want to weight your average as well. You don't want to just say, okay, it's going to be the middle price of a studio and the middle of a 1-bed. You might say, okay, it's going to be, you know, 60% above what a studio would be, but still another 40% below what a 1-bed would be. So that's kind of what I'd say to you in terms of looking at the residential component. The great thing about the commercial component is commercial property are generally priced very differently to residential property. Commercial property are generally priced based on the yield, based on the income that it can generate. And the income it can generate is generally priced on the banding. So you've already said A1, A2, but then secondarily on the square footage. So one of the things you would be able to do is go and look for comparables in that regard, i.e., what do I mean? If you go on Rightmove, Zoopla, one of those mainstream portals, and you start looking at commercial properties to let, what you'll find is most of those adverts will also have next to them the square footage of that particular property. And because they've got the square footage and they've got the, you know, the desired rental, what you can then do is start asking yourself, okay, if I divide the amount that they're trying to get as rent by the amount of square footage they have, and obviously you might have to look into the lease details, i.e. how long is the lease, etc. But if you start looking at leases which are apples for apples, i.e. a 10-year lease and another 10-year lease, you know, this one's 2,000 square meters, whereas this one's 200 square meters or whatever, that would get you to a place where you can start looking at an average square meter value. Now, the great thing about having an average square meter value is if you've got 50 square meters, 500 square meters, 5,000 square meters, you can just multiply your square meters by the average square meter value, and then you have a rough estimate of what kind of rent you're going to be able to command. So does that help answer the two questions that you've put out there, Yogesh? Yeah. Excellent. So let's jump into you're welcome. So let's jump into your third question, because you said there was a third one, and then I'll jump into the call system to take the second caller. So what was your third part of that question? Oh, good builders. Yeah. All right, great stuff. So again, just to be quick, you've asked about how to find great builders. Again, guys, those of you that are watching, let us know in the chat if you can hear Yogesh. If you can't hear Yogesh, I'll reiterate the question. If you can, you save me a bit of time not having to reiterate the question. But basically, the first thing is Yogesh has basically asked about how do you find good builders? What are the tips that you would give for people who are looking for good builders? And he also mentioned the ideology of having a great project manager to manage your builders. Now, look, all of which you've shared, Yogesh, is really important. Obviously, anyone who's ever done any kind of development, any kind of refurbishment project will know that builders are an essential and integral part of what you're basically doing. They determine the quality of your delivery. They determine a whole bunch of things. And if you know you've got the wrong people, get rid of them as soon as possible would always be my my approach. Yes, have the conversation with them, try and get them to a place where they're actually performing in a level you want them to. But if you can't, then definitely get rid of them and move on. That would be my advice. Now, in terms of tips, I'll give you 3 tips. The first tip I'll give you is this. Try to arrange as much as you can before the project starts with the builder. That's the first thing. Try to arrange as much as you can before the project starts. Now, when I say that, what do I mean? You know, you want to be in a position where effectively your whole scheme of work is written out. Okay, and that in and of itself as a document is kind of a document you might want to pay someone for. So as a caveat to this first tip, one of the things you might want to do is if you work with a really good architect, and again, I can recommend an architect for you if you're interested. One of the architects I love recommended is Charlene Campbell over at Green Tea Architects. But again, if you're interested in that, email us info@impactproperties.co.uk and we can send you their details. But Green Tea Architects, one of the things they will do is they'll work with you through the whole process. They'll even help you basically find builders. You know, they'll put your job to tender, find numerous builders, go through the numerous builders and basically help you select a builder, and they'll do that with you based on your temperament, your values, etc. So Green Tea are an organization I do vouch for. I put my hand up and say, you know what, they're the kind of people I'd work with. But the point I'm making is you might want to find a great architect or a great project manager who you could work with to give you a scheme of work. And then when you have that scheme of work, that outline of work, you can then go to the builder with that, and you seem a little bit more professional than just a developer or just an investor who's doing their first project, fairly big project, and asks a builder, oh, what do I do here? What do I do here? So that's one thing. Try to arrange as much as you can before the project actually starts. The second thing is look at opportunities where effectively you can get the builder to have skin in the game. Now, I know, you know, I don't know about yourself, Yogesh, but I know some people out here who are watching this are going to be the kind of people who don't want anybody involved in their project. Some people are like, look, it has to just be me, me, me. I have to make all the profit. That's just the way it is. And guys, if you're like that, that's fine. You know, no disregard, no insult to you. But because some people are like that, what that would stop them doing is partnering with a builder, where the builder ends up having skin in the game, where the builder's actually providing materials at cost and stuff like that, because they know they're going to get a share of the profit at the end of the project. So that's another tip. Okay, look for builders who you could actually collaborate with, more than just them doing the job, but them actually participating in the potential revenue and profit that potentially could come as a result of the gain, as a result of the project being successful at the end. So that's the second tip I'd give you. Look at potential developers or potential builders who can come along with you as a developer, who can basically have some skin in the game. Because the thing is, the moment a builder or a person has skin in the game, it slightly shifts their temperament around their deliverables in the project. So that's just something to think about and something I'd encourage as well. Before I give the third tip, I'm just going to say this. If you're getting value whilst watching this YouTube live, what I want to encourage you to do is hit the like button. But side by side with hitting the like button, why don't you write in the comments value, just so we know that you are getting value out of this YouTube live, out of Yogesh's question, and also out of how we are providing solutions and insights for him. All right, and the third thing, Yogesh, that I'd say to you, besides the first one, basically try and do as much as you can up front. Second one, try and look at how you can potentially have a builder with skin in the game. The third one is recommend recommendation, recommendation, recommendation. So when I say recommendation, 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 what do I mean? Well, you want to go and visit projects that this particular builder, this particular worker has done before. And not only projects, okay, and I said that specifically because I mean it. You want to go and visit numerous projects, maybe 3, 4, 5 projects if you can. And not only visit those projects to see the standard of the work, but ideally visit those projects to engage with the clients that particular builder has worked with before, and ask them questions, like genuinely ask them questions. How was it for you working with this builder? Where were there any stumbling points throughout the project? Were there certain things that you expected to be done which weren't done? Were there things you would have changed if you could go back and work with that builder again? So those are the 3 tips I would give you, and they're the 3 things I'd say you should consider really focusing on as you go into a project with a builder, especially if it's a builder that you've not worked with before. So hopefully that helps, Yogesh, and hopefully that answers your question. Most welcome. Go for it. Yeah. All right. Great, great point to clarify on. And that is, I'm really glad you did that, because no, that's not exactly what I meant. So what I was saying is, if the exact project or the exact deliverable, let me use that term, if the exact deliverable of what you're going to create is not in your area, then look at varied deliverables, i.e. look at 2-bedroom flats, 1-bedroom flats, and start to try and see the pattern between the prices, so you can identify roughly this is what my unit would basically command, if that makes sense. So if you're in your area and there are no micro apartments in that specific area, you don't want to look at the micro apartments because there are none there. So instead what you want to look at is the closest thing to it, and start to see what are the actual transitions in terms of the pattern between the 1-bedroom flat, the studio flat, and okay, if I'm delivering a micro apartment which is in between a studio flat and a 1-bedroom flat, then I can start to get a rough idea of what my micro apartment could be worth. So that's in the area. But what I was saying is, if you don't have micro apartments in the area, another thing you can do is start taking steps out of the area. Again, don't go too far. You want to kind of stay within a reasonable bandwidth. Okay, when you start going past a mile and stuff like that, you're somewhere else, so there's no point. But you want to start going out bit by bit from any radius to start looking at the exact thing you are going to produce, but outside of the area. So for example, if you're trying to create micro apartments in Crystal Palace and there are no micro apartments in Crystal Palace, you might want to go a little bit out. Let's say you go to Croydon. Then in Croydon, what you might want to look at is, what are the price of the micro apartments there? Now, the moment you get the price of the micro apartments there, you can't stop there, because Croydon and Crystal Palace are slightly different. So what you then want to do is start looking at the price differential, just like you've done in Crystal Palace, but you then want to do that in Croydon. So you want to say, okay, what's a 1-bedroom going for, 1-bedroom apartment going for in Crystal Palace? What's a micro apartment going for in Crystal Palace? What's a studio apartment going for in Crystal Palace? What's the price differential between the 3? And then take that template and apply it to what you've done in Crystal Palace to ask yourself, is what you've done reasonable? Does that make more sense, Yogesh? Yeah. All right, look, let's do this. Let's do this, because I want you to get this. I don't want you to not have what we're talking about. So I'm gonna have to take the headphone off, so I'm not gonna hear you, but you will hear me. All right. So can you see the board? Yeah. All right. Let's do this. This is why Bluetooth headphones are always better for this. All right. Very quickly, I'm gonna explain this very, very quickly. All right. So we got Crystal Palace, CP, and we've got Croydon, okay, which is a neighboring area, if you think of it like this. In Crystal Palace, what we are going to create are micro apartments. Okay, we're creating micro apartments. This is what we are making. Now, if we look at comparables, or we look for comparables in Crystal Palace for micro apartments and there are none, what we then want to do is, what is the denomination of property above a micro apartment? And we know that that is going to be a 1-bedroom flat. Okay, so 1-bed flat or 1-bedroom apartment. What is going to be the denomination of property below a micro apartment? We know that's going to be generally a studio apartment. Okay, so then what we'll start doing is we'll start looking at these prices. So what is the average price of a really good studio apartment? And let's say, for example, I'm just using numbers out of my head, but let's say we do the due diligence and we end up finding out that a good studio apartment in that area is 200k. Then we do the same for a 1 bedroom flat and we say, well, a good 1 bedroom flat in the area is 300k. So again, rough numbers, just speculating, but let's assume this is what happens. The moment we get that, we know that it's going to be very unlikely for this micro apartment to end up being worth more than 300k. We also know that it's going to be very unlikely for a micro apartment to be worth less than 200k. So we know that these are effectively our boundaries. Now, like I was saying earlier, generally we'll find micro apartments because a micro apartment is a 1 bedroom apartment. It's just a very small one. It's got a smaller footprint. So, can you hear me, Yogesh? All right, cool. So try to keep to the audio, and the screen will be catching up as well. Yeah. All right. So just as I was saying, we know that basically the micro apartment price is going to sit in between 200 and 300k. And one of the comments I was making earlier is micro apartments are mini versions of flats. So as a result, we know that the price of this is going to be closer to this than it will be of this. So roughly, we might say, well, I'll estimate this to be 255 to 265k. Okay, so that's my rough estimate based on looking at differentials. Now, I'm doing that inside the area, but the problem with that is there are no micro apartments in the area. So I'll then go to the next closest area. So let's say when I get to the next closest area, I'm in Croydon. And let's say in Croydon, there are micro apartments, but there's also 1 beds and there's also studios. So what I'll now do is I'll say, well, for a 1 bed, for a micro, and for a studio, what are the prices? So let's say I start doing my due diligence there and I find out that studios are roughly at 160 in the Croydon area. I then find out that 1 beds are roughly at 280 in the Croydon area. And the micros that they actually have come in at 210. Okay, so what I can now start saying is, okay, what's the price differential here? Okay, so here we can see there's a differential of 120k between these two. Okay, whereas here the differential was 100 grand. Okay, and then here we can see there's a differential of 50k. Okay, and a larger differential here of 70k. So this information tells me that the micro apartment price in Croydon is not as close to a 1 bed as it is to a studio. So that might make me say, okay, well, I've done this, but maybe I should put in a little bit more suppression or reduce the value a little bit more just because of what I found in Croydon. And that could lead me putting this at a rough 245k as my comparable. Okay, but remember, this is a comparable. It's not an exact value, it's just a comparable. So if I've got 6 units at 245, I can start making estimates based on that. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. All right, so did that help? Did that help, Yogesh? Micro apart, the studios. Yep, yep. Unit. That's right. Yep, yep. And look at the relationships again. So you're looking at all of this stuff is numbers. So you're looking at relationships. So that's what you'd be doing. Yeah. Is that? I would say if you want to interpret this for other people, look at the percentages. But if you're just doing it for yourself, then you want to look at the numbers, because you want to say, like I said at the end, look, if I've got 6 of these units at 245, that's a GDV of this amount. If I've got 3 of these units at 245, that's a GDV of that amount. Whereas if you're talking to someone else, you want to make it clearer that, well, hold on a minute, we know we're going to have 40% above the price of a studio if we produce this kind of a unit in this area. So it depends on who your audience is, which will determine how you want to basically measure it, if that makes sense. Is that helpful? All right. Excellent. No problem, Yogesh. Thank you for calling in and we appreciate you. All right. Make sure you hit the like button. hit subscribe and become a part of the community, those of you who are watching. All right, we're going to go on to the next caller. Thank you for your patience. Hopefully we'll be able to hear this caller now. Hello, caller 576. I can hear you perfectly. Good evening. Who are we speaking with? Is that D for Delta? I didn't hear the letter. What? Yeah, that's it. I just want to know. Obviously, I need to address you. All right. So this is D. Hi guys. Hi D. I'm Samuel. And D, are you happy for the YouTube world to hear what you are going to be sharing, and also how I advise in terms of if I was in your position, what I would be doing also? Excellent. Excellent. You're most welcome. And D, do something for me. Just focus on the phone. Yeah, don't focus on the YouTube, and that way we'll have a better conversation. All right. So D, how can we help you? Yep. Okay. So is the percentage that you have half? Okay. You said you only want to sell 50%. Okay. Okay. Yep. 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 Live show. Yep. 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 So HMO effectively. When all right, let me say this. When you say multiple rental, are you talking about one house with multiple people paying rent inside of it? Yeah, so that's technically a HMO. If you get all the legalities done, then it is a HMO. But I'm only using the word technically because a HMO should have a HMO mortgage. It should have a HMO license, depending on the kind of HMO. So, but yeah, technically what you're saying is you want a cash flowing property, and in order to do that, you want to do a multi-let, which let's use that term, multi-let. Yeah. Mhm. Cool. Cool. Yeah. No, no, no. You're good. The context helps. You might not go for it. Sometimes you should. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool, fantastic. So, guys, let me ask you this, D. When you was on hold, could you hear the other caller? All right, cool. So, hope no, that's fine. That's fine. If you could hear Yogesh, then I know everyone can hear you. All right, guys. So look, just in case you can't hear D, I'm gonna explain what D's just asked, and then we're gonna jump straight into her question, which I think is a really great question. So D's basically said she's in a predicament where she owns a property with somebody else. Her and the other person both own a percentage share. I believe, again, D, you're just gonna have to tell me if I'm right or wrong. I believe D owns 40% of that property, whereas the partner owns 60% of that property. The partner's interested in selling 60% of the property. D's not interested in 60% of the property being sold. D thinks there could be a more creative approach, i.e. selling maybe something like 50%, retaining some revenue, using that revenue to refurbish or change around the house, and then rent the house out as a cash flowing property because of some of the YouTube videos that she's watched that we've done in the past. Now, is that a good summary, D, or have I missed something or got something confused that you need to clarify for me? All right, good stuff. No problem. All right, now this is where we're going to start, D. All right, we're going to start with numbers and percentage. Okay, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I think that's going to help. So very quickly, you said the partner owns 50% of the property. Is that right? 50 or 60? All right, but on paper, i.e. with land registry, okay, so it's 50-50 ownership, but a 60-40 contribution. All right, now here's the best question. What does your partner want for the property? Like for their share of the property? Have they said to you, look, I want this? Have you, even a better question is, have you asked them what they want? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so she wants you to have the house and she wants you to use it to for beneficial means, yeah? All right, cool. So is there a mortgage on this property? 2-year agreement. All right, cool. And is that an interest only mortgage or it's repayment, yeah? All right, so is this property a residential property in terms of the mortgage product, or is it a buy-to-let property? Okay, cool. All of that is very, very helpful. All right, so look, I'm going to just share some stuff with you to help you get some bearings on this, yeah? Now, first thing is, regardless of how you decide to split this, yeah, depending on the mortgage product you have, that could have an effect on whether you are or are not allowed to actually use this property as a rental property. Yeah. Now, most mortgage lenders have caveats in their mortgage where you can speak to them to make changes. So I'll give you an example. If you've got a residential mortgage with Virgin, yeah, Virgin Mortgages, it will take you a whole lot of paperwork, so I've been told, yeah, a whole bunch of paperwork in order to convert that mortgage into a buy-to-let mortgage from a residential mortgage. Okay, if you've got a mortgage with Nationwide, yeah, Nationwide Building Society, a residential mortgage with Nationwide Building Society, and you desire to convert that mortgage into a buy-to-let mortgage, all you have to do is basically phone them, have a conversation with them, and they basically just increase your interest rate by 1%. It's that simple. Okay, they increase your interest rate by 1%. Now it's buy-to-let. NatWest, if you got a residential mortgage with NatWest Bank, but you want to change it, and again, all of these things I'm saying to you are kind of pre-COVID. So again, they might change now, but this is the general gist. If you've got a mortgage with NatWest are kind of one of the easiest companies to change a residential mortgage to a buy-to-let. You just basically phone them, tell them you want to change, and I think in many cases, they don't even charge you anything more. They just say, okay, fine, and they'll just do the papers, yeah? So the reason I'm giving you those three examples is not to say, oh, it's possible, it's not possible. It's just to say to you, depending on who your current lender is, will have an effect on how you can make that happen. Yeah? All right, so that's first. Now, second, if your colleague, if your partner wants to cash out and they want 200 grand, what you've got to bear in mind is you guys have not paid 200 grand for that property. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you buy a £400,000 property and you buy that via right to buy, you might get like a 100k discount, for example, a 75 grand discount, 100 grand discount, whatever. After you get the 100 grand discount, the 400 grand property, you're only paying 300 grand for it, for example, if it's a 100 grand discount. Does this all make sense so far? Yeah? All right, cool. So you bought a £400,000 property, not you, but the person. They've bought a £400,000 property with a 100 grand discount, so they've paid 300,000 for the property. Now, because you're going to go and get a mortgage and you're going to go and get a right to buy mortgage, you're not even going to probably put down a 5% deposit. So your deposit might be zero, for example. Okay, and the reason your deposit might be zero is because the discount you're getting from the council is usually greater than the deposit you would need to buy that house. So are we on the same page so far? Yeah. All right. So the point I'm making is you've put nothing into the property financially. Your partner would have put nothing into the property financially, but you are both, like you said, contributing to the mortgage. Now, if you look at how much the mortgage is worth, well, if you've paid the mortgage for 5 years and the mortgage is £1,000 a month, then someone who's paid £600 a month for 5 years, they haven't paid nowhere near 200 grand. Does that make sense? Yeah, and equally you paying. Go for it. All right, cool. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is not to make it sound difficult or complicated, but it's to give you and hopefully your partner as well perspective around what you guys actually have in those bricks. Because for most people, they think, oh, I own a 400k house, but hold on a minute, you didn't put a deposit in, you haven't really done anything to add value, so there isn't £400,000 there, which is yours. There's £300,000 of a mortgage, but if you sold that property tomorrow, you wouldn't get that £300,000. You'd have to pay that to the mortgage lender, right? All right. So the first question we've got to ask is, in light of that is, what do you actually have in that property? And for me, one thing I'd say you guys actually have in that property is you have the 100k equity or whatever discount you got from the council. That's something you guys have. Yeah. All right, so the question is two things. One, how do you tap into that? Okay. Or if you want, like you mentioned, investors, or how do you tap into something else in order to pay out your other partner? And then secondarily, besides how do you tap into that, the second thing you want to think of is what are you going to do with that property in order for it to increase cash flow and be more valuable as a cash flowing asset? Yeah. All right, cool. So first things first. If you guys have £100,000 in equity in that property, based on what you've said to me, 60% being your partner's, 40% being yours, what that means is you have £40,000 in equity in that property. They have £60,000 of equity in that property. That makes sense, right? All right, great stuff. Now, second thing is, if you want to buy them out, obviously you have to look at the legalities of changing the mortgage, maybe changing their ownership rights on land registry, etc. You have to look at what that's going to cost you, what that's going to look like. But what I'd say to you is you might be in a better position rather than working with the existing £400,000 worth of property we're talking about, looking at bringing someone in, like you were saying, an investor who might come with something like 100 grand. And because they come with 100 grand, maybe 60k of that 100 grand goes to your partner. Okay, and again, it can't be 200 grand because 200 grand is mortgage. It's the bank's money. It's not your money. So this excellent. So this investor might come on board with something like 100 grand, give 60 grand as a payout to your partner. So your partner's now out, and now as a result of them giving 60 grand to your partner, they might end up taking a smaller share, a 20% share, a 30% share of the property rather than a 60% share. So what that instinctively does is increases your share from 40% to 60% or 70%. And obviously your increase in share, someone might say, oh, well, why should D get an increase in share? Well, D gets an increase in share because what D's done is presented this deal. You've structured this deal. You've put this deal together and made it of value to a new investor and also made it possible for your partner to exit. Does that make sense? All right, cool. So now that this investor's come with 100, given 60 to your partner to be able to walk away, there will be a remaining 40, which you would have agreed with the investor for them to use to refurbish the property to the standard where maybe the property can be used as a multi-let, etc., to meet legislation, meet guidelines, etc. So you're in that better position. Okay. So the thing you've got to think about, and again, guys, those of you who are getting value from watching this, hit the like button, press the share button, let other people in the world know what value you're getting from the YouTube world. All right, so the other thing you've got to think about with this, D, is where is the gain for the investor? Now, for me, what I find again and again in property is most people trying to do property don't ever think of other people. They only ever think of themselves. Like this live show, for example, this is me and my team saying, how can we help other people? But the problem is most people don't think about other people. They just think about themselves. How can I help myself? Okay. Go for it. You're going to say something. Yep. Cash flow. Yep. 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 Yeah. No, that's totally perfect. Like that's totally perfect. The question is how, like, if it makes sense to them. Like this is the thing you've got to bear in mind. Like most people don't think about like I was saying, other people. Okay, I've got a comment here by Prince. Hi guys. Okay, cool. They've deleted the comment, so maybe it's because I wasn't speaking. But yeah, like I've got, just to be clear, it's like everything you just said, D, is perfect in my opinion. Everything you just said is perfect. Like what you just said is, Samuel, I'm not one of those people who are not thinking about someone else. I'm actually thinking about the investor as well. And you're totally right. Like if the investor is going to get a stake in the property plus a cash flow, then in my opinion, the investor would be interested. But the question is where it all works out. So when I say where it all works out, what do I mean? Okay, so let me break this down. So D was basically saying, guys, for those of you who might not have heard, that she's looked at the situation and thought to herself, well, if the investor can get a stake of the property plus the investor can also get some cash flow, the investor should be happy. And the answer is yes. You know, that's totally right. However, it has to make sense to the investor. So when I say it has to make sense to the investor, what do I actually mean? Well, this is what I mean. If the investor's putting in 100 grand and you're going to give the investor 20% of a, or let's call it 25% of a £400,000 property, well, technically you've just given them their 100 grand back in a way. Does that make sense? Because 25% of £400,000 worth of property is 100,000. Now again, obviously there's a mortgage, there's this, there's that, but the point is, if you are giving them 25% of the property and they're giving you 100k in cash, you're already trading the equity stake, the worth of the property, for their cash, if that makes sense. Yeah. And now when you're adding cash flow on top, that obviously should be the incentive where the investor feels, well, this is even better because I'm converting my 100 grand cash into 100 grand in bricks, but I'm also now getting a regular cash flow to say thank you for choosing to invest with us, for example. Yeah. All right, perfect. Now, the question around all of this is really whether the amount you're giving to the investor through means of cash flow is worth it to them. Okay, that's the real question. So what do I mean by that? If you're saying, well, look, your 100 grand that you've got in the bank right now, and in a minute, when we come off this call and I share with you guys as the viewers the document that I came across this week, you guys are going to get exactly why what D is offering is actually a great opportunity as long as the numbers stack up. So this investor, potentially, whoever they are, they might have £100,000 sat in the bank right now, getting 0.01% interest, which I talk about all the time. The reality is, whilst that money's in the bank, it's actually working at a slower rate than inflation. So what that means is you are going up by 0.01%, but inflation works against your money at 3%. So what that means is they're losing money every year by leaving that money in the bank. So the question is, are you going to offer them a better return than what they're currently getting in the bank? Or are you going to offer them a better return than what they're currently getting wherever that money is? So if that 100 grand's in the stocks and they're getting 6% on stocks, are you going to offer them a better return than the 6% on stocks? If that money's currently in the bank and they're getting 0.01%, are you going to offer them a better return? So the key to all of this for you, D, if you are going to offer an investor a stake plus cash flow, is just you thinking to yourself, what is a good cash flow return? And again, you can't just make the numbers up in your head. Similar to Yogesh's question a moment ago when he called in, it's going to be based on the reality. So for example, the property you're talking about is in a specific location. It can only command a specific rent. So right now, if you rent it to a family, it might make 1,500 a month. Now, if you pay the mortgage, let's say the mortgage is 500 a month, that's £1,000 that's potential profit per month. Now, if you say, oh, well, it's a 3-bed flat, instead of renting it to a family for 1,500, we are going to chop it up and rent each of the rooms for 800 a month. Now, if you did that, you might be having 8, 16, 2, 4. You might have 2,400 coming a month. Now you pay your mortgage, £500-600 a month. You've got 1,900 a month. Now, at 1,900 a month, you might be able to say to an investor, look, I'll give you £500 a month. That £500 a month to an investor over a year is £6,000. That £6,000 out of their 100 grand they're putting in is 6%. So if I'm getting a 6% cash flow return as well as a 25% stake in a 400k property, to me, if that money's in the bank, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, but you have to make it make sense. And that's the key when you're bringing in an investor, making it make sense. Not just, oh yeah, I'm doing this because it looks good, but oh yeah, I'm doing this because it makes sense. It makes sense to me and it makes sense to this investor as well. Yeah, does that help? Does that answer your question? Most welcome. And look, I'm going to say this to you, D, because what you did ask is a bit more complicated than a call-in question. If you want, reach out to my team, info@impactproperties.co.uk, info@impactproperties.co.uk, and just send them an email and say, look, how do I book a call with Samuel? They'll send you a link. You can book a call with me and we can chat offline if you want, especially because you were like, yeah, isn't D all right? Is that helpful? Most welcome. Most welcome. Most welcome. It's a pleasure to work with you and look forward to seeing your property success. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, and be a part of what we're doing. All right. All right. Excellent. Take care, D. Bye-bye. All right, guys. Excellent. Bye-bye. All right, guys. So that was D, one of our callers in. And that was absolutely, in my opinion, a fantastic question that she asked. And I'm actually grateful to see that people have got deals that they are structuring in the current climate. Because what happens is a lot of people think there aren't deals to be done right now. And guys, let me tell you, there are deals to be done right now. There's a lot to be done in the property space right now. So now, look, without further ado, let me share with you guys the document that I was talking about, because D just asked a great question. And for some of you, you're not even going to be able to realize why D's question was so relevant in terms of what's going on right now in the current climate. And I want to help you to be able to do that. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just jump straight into this particular document, which I recently came across. All right, so let's just bring that on screen. All right, now this document is a document known as the strategy document. Okay, it's called Strategy and this document is created by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are one of the big 4 accountancy firms in the world. Now, if you can read it, I'm not sure if you can read it, but the headline of this document, okay, this particular book is a 20-page book, and it has the industry focus, and it says, is the UK ready for negative interest rates? Is the UK ready for negative interest rates? Now, I know some of you who are watching this are going to be smiling. If you're someone who's smiling the minute you saw me read this, press the put a comment in the chat and just say smiling, okay? And the people who are going to be smiling are people who have been watching episode 1, episode 2, all the way up until today, episode 18 of the Impact Show. And the reason why is because I've been talking about this since March. I've been saying negative interest rates is something that they have been talking about in the US since early March as a result of the recession. Now, the problem is in the UK, we've been so behind talking about the virus and talking about lockdown that we haven't actually seen what's happening to the economy. And this is something I've been saying week in, week out. But long story short, PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four, they come out with this publication, Is the UK Ready for Negative Interest Rates? What to Expect and How to Prepare. If you go through the documents, okay, now first and foremost, why is PwC saying what to expect and how to prepare if this is something that's not going to be taking place? I'm going to read a few of the sound bites from this document. If you want the document, just write in the chat, want the document, and I'll get the team or myself to throw the link inside of the chat so you can go get this document yourself and have a thorough read through the 20 pages. Now, it says, noises from the Bank of England suggest the chances of it dropping its base rate below zero have gone from don't count on it to anything's possible. And for banks, that's a big deal. All right, so that's the first thing. Now look, guys, for some of you might not have an idea of what I'm talking about in regards to this actually happening. And if you're one of those people, again, let us know in the chat. Just say, I'm not sure what you're talking about, Samuel. But I'm going to break this down. The interest rate of a country determines the rates that are set for interest by every bank throughout the country for every type of lending, whether it's a loan, whether it's credit cards, whether it's anything else, whether it's a mortgage, etc., etc. And obviously, because we're in the property space, the mortgage factor is quite important to us. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because, like I said, I've been talking about this since early March, saying that, look, the interest rates are at an all-time low already, but at the same time, there is speculation in the US that the interest rates are going to fall further. Now, you can't fall positive past zero. So what that means is when you go past zero, if you fall as an interest rate, you go into negative. Now, what is a negative interest rate? A negative interest rate, for those of you who do not know, is where you are going to pay to have your money being held by other people. So you've probably never, like, I don't think I've ever experienced this in my lifetime, but what this basically means is, you know, going back to Dee's example, Dee's question a moment ago, if you have £100,000 in the bank right now and you are receiving a 0.1 or a 0.01% interest rate, if the Bank of England chooses to have a negative interest rate, what that will basically mean is if you've got a negative 0 point something interest rate on your money, you are going to have to pay for your money to stay in that account. And I'm not talking about your £6.50 or your £10 or £20 bank fee. I'm talking about paying based on the interest rate because it's a negative interest rate. So your money will be degrading itself. It will be eroding on a day by day, week by week, month by month basis. Let me read some of this article and come back with some insights. Guys, if you're getting value from this, hit the subscribe, hit the like, hit the share, let other people know that this is valuable. Now, it says, is the UK set for negative interest rates? The subtitle here says, prior to COVID-19, bankers could be forgiven for hoping rising interest rates may bring some relief to the margin pressure plaguing them since the global financial crisis. But in the wake of the pandemic and resulting Bank of England emergency rate cut, such hopes have all but vanished for now. Okay, so I want you to bear this in mind. I'm going to jump into two of the paragraphs and then I'll stop there and just give you some of my thoughts. It says, instead, rates may go even lower. In fact, there is a very real prospect of negative interest rates. And for banks, that's a big deal because even if the rates never drop below their present level, the very possibility they might makes it essential to prepare for. Guys, I hope you are taking heed to this. Listen to this. Since 2009 and the last major financial crisis until as recently as 2019, the Bank of England under previous Governor Mark Carney maintained the effective lower bound is close to zero, but positive. So that's a soundbite. That's a quote from the Governor Mark Carney, basically saying, look, we're really low with this interest rate, but we're still above zero. And the reason you've got to listen when people make such statements is because they're seeding you. They're seeding you with the concept of below zero. They're letting you know that below zero is a possibility, but right now, I'm doing good because I'm keeping us above zero. Let's keep going for the rest of this paragraph. It says, and as recently as March of this year, talking about 2020, current Governor Andrew Bailey also indicated he did not consider negative interest rates a plausible tool for the UK. Guys, this is real. Like I said, look, this is page 3 of 20 pages. Go and get this document. Go and have a look. Go and have a read. Go and get your own understanding. Break down what you think is going on, because one of the things I've done in the live show previously, I've said, guys, look, don't just follow the mainstream media. Don't just follow tabloid headlines. Don't read headlines and think you know what's going on in terms of inferring what you should be doing in your property business, because that's not how it works. That's really, really not how it works. Okay, so I'll just jump into the chat real quickly. We got a whole bunch of people chatting. Thank you, guys. Like it says on the icon, hit subscribe, hit like, get involved with what we're doing. All right, so here we've got value. Thank you also for your comment. Value. We got hi guys, we can't hear what the guest is saying, please. The audio for the guest is a bit low. I think we turned that up. I think that was sorted out. Thank you guys for letting us know. We got Dion saying smiling. We got Tosin saying smiling. Tosin's also saying please drop the link to the document, and we will do that right. Well, I'm gonna have to do that in a minute because the link I've got is not the right one right now, so I'll get that done for you guys. But guys, look, I want you to understand this, okay? We live in a world where there are a lot of news. There's a lot of news casters, purporters, people out there who are telling you this and telling you that about what's going on. What we need to be is we need to be the people who are studious, who are understanding why we are doing what we're doing. I'll give you an example. I'm an avid reader of the Bible. Most of you know that. In the Bible, in the book of Acts, it talks about a group of people. It calls them the Bereans. And what it says about the Bereans is that when someone would come and preach to them, they wouldn't just take whatever the person would say to them. They'd go back and check the scriptures to make sure that what was being said was actually true. So guys, it's exactly the same. You have to use the same level of intellect and insight in order to move forward in your property journey. Make sure you are checking that what people are saying to you is actually true. All right, guys, now look, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna get the team, because we can't do that right now, I'm gonna get the team to actually put in the description of this video. So this will be done in 20 minutes, 30 minutes time, okay? Hold me to it if you need to. In 20 minutes or 30 minutes time, come back to this video, and what you'll find is in the description a link to that 20-page ebook created by PwC. I will make sure that it's there. The team will make sure that it's there. Now, just a little plug before I jump off, guys. Why don't you go and get our free resource? Get your free ebook here. It is the Sourcing Blueprint ebook. This ebook is absolutely free. It's going to help you understand how you can start sourcing properties in this current property climate, so you can move forward and you can help other people move forward in their property journey by finding valuable property assets, and not only finding those valuable property assets, but helping other people to use those property assets to move forward in their property journey. So it's here. Go get it. It's right here. www.sourcingblueprint.com. www.sourcingblueprint.com. That ebook will give you value. Okay, short ebook, 20 pages, not too long to read, infographic included. Read through that and have a great understanding of how to source property opportunities. Now, last but not least, if you haven't hit like already, hit the like button. If you haven't already made a stride, I want to encourage you to make a stride to go this way and get that ebook that I just mentioned. But side by side with that, why don't you go and register for our upcoming webinar? We've got a brand new webinar that's going to be on Monday. That webinar you can access by going to www.impactproperties.co.uk/webinar, and you'll be able to hear and understand how I break down how you can take advantage in this current climate, even with all of the changes and circumstances taking place. Guys, Samuel I Can Win. I'm absolutely loving the communication and engagement that we've had in the chat today. Guys, go out there, make it happen. Happy investing.